Hello again and welcome to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thank you so much for joining us on today's show. I've got a bit of a celebrity as today's guest, a lady who, if you tune into national news, you'll recognize her. You'll recognize her name, certainly recognize her face. I'll tell you a little bit more about her after a minute, after I describe what's working. For those of you who are new, and we continue to have new stations join, What's Working is the show focusing on workplace, workforce, and marketplace trends. My goal is to find guests that can talk about these trends in such a way that you and I can learn from these guests and perhaps apply something that they teach us during our time together to something that it is that you do. Somehow make each of us just a little bit better at whatever it is that you do. So welcome to What's Working. I'm glad you're listening. Hopefully you'll find this show valuable. It was about, I want to say 6 or 7 months ago now, that I was on the campus of Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, and I managed to network myself into the dean of my daughter's college. She's a student there at Ole Miss. She's a junior, and the dean of the Department of Journalism, I thought I'd like to meet her. I'd like to see what she's all about. I'd like to hear her talk about journalism and what's going on. So I introduced myself. I told her that I was going to be there visiting my daughter and I'd love to have time with her. And I went into her office. She was very gracious to receive me, and we talked about this show. I told her what I do and the nature of the show, and I asked her the question. I said, I think with what's going on in the media today, that I expect that you're having a difficult time finding journalism students. That there has been a backlash against fake news, and everybody thinks everybody else's news is fake. There's a backlash against these traditional reporters that they have some sort of hidden agenda. I said, I suspect that the youth today, these college students there, have no real interest in journalism. How are you keeping your school afloat? Her answer was, quite the contrary. We have had a surge in demand for journalism. Your daughter, she said, my sweet 21-year-old, your daughter is an example. They want to get in there. They want to tell the story. They want to learn how to market and sell through the websites and online. They're using marketing and advertising tactics. They're using journalism tactics. In fact, she said, we're one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing school on the University of Mississippi campus. And I was surprised to hear that. I thought, wow, that's contrary to what I would expect. Well, as you've just heard, this show is about trends. And what we're seeing, at least what I learned on the campus of Ole Miss, is that there is a growing trend in the interest in journalism. And I thought, well, who can I talk to about this? The dean of the campus wasn't exactly who I wanted. She was very generous. And I just kind of sat on the idea, as I often do, thinking my unconscious mind will work this through. Many years ago at a conference, I was introduced to be the speaker. She was the MC by a lady named Jill Schlesinger. You'll recognize her name if you follow CBS News. She's got a podcast called Jill on Money. She's got a couple of books, one of them that just came out last month. And she and I clicked. And when I was in New York the next time, she invited me to the CBS Studios to tour. And I went in the morning and she brought me onto the set as it was live for the CBS morning show. She introduced me to the hosts. We walked through the green room, and there are all kinds of people and faces of people that I recognize as being famous, but I have no idea who they were. She was kind to me. And it occurred to me just a couple of weeks ago, maybe I can get Jill on the show to talk about journalism today and what the trends are. I reached out to her. I reminded her who I was. She remembered, and she'll be our guest when we come back from What's Working. Jill Schlesinger has won an Emmy. She's won all kinds of awards for her podcast and her radio show, one called a Gracie Award. She has a background in financial services, which is what put her in that position at CBS to talk about money and the economy for CBS. When we come back, you, me, and Jill Schlesinger. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be back.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Grateful for your attention to the show today. On the other side of a Zoom call, Jill Schlesinger. I told you how I met her many years ago. She and I have been catching up a moment before the microphones were on. Jill, I was telling the listeners that as I was visiting my daughter's dean at Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, she's the dean of the journalism school, and the journalism school is chock-a-block with new people.
Oh, my gosh.
She says there is an extraordinary demand for journalism and the marketing of journalism, etc. And yet in our moments together, just a moment ago, you said it's an awful time to go into journalism.
Oh, it's tough.
And I'm wondering if I shouldn't call my daughter and say, wait, I've got an inside scoop. Do something else.
It's not an inside scoop, though, of course. It's widely known that the media business is a consolidating industry, and journalism is, like, within media, consolidating by even more than the whole overall media business. So that's why I sort of joked with you about that. But I'm sure your daughter's going to be fantastic.
Sure. She'll be the exception to that rule. She'll be fantastic. So your career, I've got 3 different bios of you here in front of me. You began with CBS News in 2013, if this thing is accurate. Prior to that, you were in the financial services industry. You had your own...
I'm going to go back farther than that. You know, it's weird. So because LinkedIn is weird with the way they do this, I actually joined CBS in 2009. I was previously an independent financial advisor, financial planner, investment management, very run-of-the-mill kind of retail business. And I sold that business to a larger firm and then decided, well, you know what? The way that we grew our business was we had a radio show, and I did a lot of writing and speaking, and that expanded into television. And then I started appearing on national television kind of around 2004, 5, 6. And then during the financial crisis, got a lot of exposure. And CBS approached me at the beginning of 2009 and asked me if I would be willing to help launch a vertical website called moneywatch.com, cbsmoneywatch.com. And I did that. So from 9, 10, 11, 12 was doing Money Watch, and then moved over to the news division full time in 2013.
So in the news division full time, I recognize you on TV. I see you there. Do they have you on a schedule? In other words, Jill, you need to produce content every 6 days, 4 days, something like that.
When we need you, it sort of works out to twice a week on the network. And that can mean anything from show up for 2 minutes because breaking news overnight that Macy's is closing a bunch of stores. It can mean that the big inflation report is coming out. It can mean, as I speak to you today, I'm blowing off our editorial meeting because I had an important interview with you. And
there you go.
They asked me to come on the show to talk about the strong start for the stock market for the first 2 months of the year. So it can range from a lot of different things. And sometimes I pitch them, and sometimes they give me a holler and say, wow, can you help us out with this? And so it ends up being usually twice a week in the morning. And then I do another day morning, basically, where I do something specific for our owned and operated television stations around the country. So we've got a bunch of them, about a dozen of them. And that's just for those particular markets. We call those live two-ways, where like what I'm doing with you, but it would be live
Right.
and it would be in St. Louis, or it's in Chicago, or it's in the Bay Area, or it's in New York. And so I do that. And then I have a radio show called Jill on Money that is licensed by CBS and distributed by Paramount Global. I do a podcast for them called Money Watch. And then I have my own little Jill on Money world, which is my podcast, my speaking, my writing, and
Webinars. I saw that online.
I mean, I'm trying, man. I'm trying to stay relevant.
And that's a big part of it, is trying to stay relevant. Are you coming to the content? Let's say you made content today on the surging stock market. That's I wanted to ask you about that as well. But the surging stock market, are you using that content then to seed all these other things that you do? Is it one idea and then you manipulate it into several different things, or is each one of these things require its own originality?
I hope that it can be repurposed as much as possible. I really have no interest in creating more work for myself. I'm basically a lazy salesperson. And so that means that if I can use things over and over, I'd be very happy. So I'll give you an example of how I was thinking about this. Sometimes it's just like something comes to me, right? So last week, I thought at the end of last week, so we're talking here, it's the end of February. And I was looking at all the round numbers that had been approached by the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. And I was looking at market performance and I was like, wow, things are kind of cooking. So I wrote a blog post for my blog, Jill on Money. And then I used that blog post as the basis for a conversation with radio stations. So every Monday morning, I talk to 18 different radio stations around the country. They're affiliated with CBS News. And I also do a hit for NPR. And I say, hey, here's our topic for Monday. And the topic that I chose was this market milestone.
Sure.
Just a way to do that. And then I pitched that same idea to CBS Mornings. And they kind of were like, nah, we don't need you. And then they're like, oh, no, wait, we need you. So then I put it together. I translate the topic depending on the outlet. So if I'm writing for Tribune, it might be one part of one portion of that. If I want to write a long blog post for myself or for the radio stations, I expand upon that. I shorten it up. I make it TV friendly for television. So all of these, they hopefully should work together. But I'm in this very strange position, unlike most people who work in the network world, that I am a multi-platform and I do adjust based on whichever platform I'm using.
Do you like multi-platform? Do you wish one could carry the load?
No, I get bored easily. I like this. Yeah. I mean, my first love is the spoken word. So I love podcasting. I love radio. I really do. And, but listen, the problem with it is that you're only going to reach a certain type of person and you want to try to expand your reach. And so television is so broad. It's so awesome. You know, if I'm doing something for CBS Mornings, it's a few million people I'm going to talk to. If I'm doing something, say, for like during the pandemic, I did a bunch of pieces for CBS Sunday Morning. It was like a huge show. It was 5-6 million people who would see that. And so
devout followers.
Yes,
to that show.
Exactly right. And so, you know, everything is really fun. My brain works in a very old fashioned way. I come up with an idea. I have to write it down. The written word kind of comes first, and I use that as a way to talk about it on the radio. And when I look at adapting that for television, I think of it in, you know, not just what I'm going to say, but what could go up on a graphic and what will stick with somebody when they're doing a million different things at 7:45 in the morning.
What is your fear? You and I talked back when we were together last about CBS coming to you someday and saying, we found you, however, she's 20 years younger and thank you for your time.
And she's cheaper too.
She's cheaper, sure.
You know, I've become less concerned with that. I think I just signed a new deal. I'm very happy with that. I think that as you get older, you get more confident and you say, well, you know, if that didn't work, I would do something else. And you know, when I talk to you, I think that the podcast and the radio show were at a certain point, but we had explosive growth during the pandemic. And that absolutely changed the story I tell myself.
Yeah. And what is that? What is the story you tell yourself?
I used to be like, oh, I'd be nothing if it weren't for CBS, and they were amazing. They took somebody who had no journalistic background and gave me opportunities. And now I know that what I do is there's a little special sauce to it, that it can be adapted to different audiences, and that I have more confidence. It's 15 years into the mission, so I feel better about that and feel comfortable that I can keep doing this for a long time.
Jill Schlesinger is a certified financial planner. She's won an Emmy and a Gracie Award for her different broadcasts and different television work. Grateful to have her on the show. We'll be right back and maybe get into the talk about journalism, which is what we're supposed to be talking about after this break.
This is Bill Eastet. I perfected my baking recipe behind my live music stage at my little restaurant in Fairhope, Alabama. We have custom-made smokers and small batch bacon made just for you. So if you're looking for the best bacon in America that has been cured, smoked, and even serenaded by songwriters, you definitely need to try Billy's Small Batch Bacon. www.billysbacon.com.
Jill Schlesinger's on the other side of a Zoom call with me. She's a weekly guest on NPR's Here and Now. Her podcast is called Jill on Money. Second book released January 2023, The Great Money Reset. The other one was The Dumb Things Smart People Do with Their Money. The lady is working all the time. Jill, fake news and journalism. I mean, you're out there. You're the face for so many people of what to do with money, finance, etc. And the conversation over the past, I don't know, let's just say 10 years, is to try to discredit experts in the field of journalism. You're in that field. I mean, you don't have a journalism background. You went to Brown with a liberal arts degree, if I recall that correctly in your bio here. So you're not a classically trained journalist. How do you feel about the people out there that I'm sure are trying to debunk you or saying she's part of the problem? And it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you're on. Somebody is out there saying you're part of the problem. How does that make you feel?
Listen, I think that when I first got into this business, it was a financial crisis. I was a steady hand and voice and face because I had lived through previous financial crises, and people really did trust that. And then as I think worked a little bit longer, and the recovery in the, 2010 to 18, 19, I think the world really did change dramatically. I work with unbelievable people. I feel like CBS News is one of the, really is, despite the stock price, I mean, the people I work with are just unbelievable. They're like the platinum people of the industry. Yeah. They care. They work hard. They are diligent. They tell every side of a story. And there's people who are going to take you down. I mean, I think the funniest thing is there are haters everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think if you go into social media, you're going to ask for a lot of hate. I have always thought it was funny when I would do a segment, and this happened recently, where I did a segment about the economy, and I got a nasty comment that said that I think they called me a capitalist pig, and the exact same segment caused somebody to say that I was a socialist tool. So I figure if I'm pissing everyone off, that's probably okay.
That's right. Equally pissing each side off. Yeah.
So, I mean, look, it's really hard. I will say that I don't look at social media ever anymore.
Ever. Oh my gosh.
Ever. I'm not interested. I don't care. I have a wonderful producer named Mark Talercio. He manages all of my social accounts, and he'll bring something to me that he thinks is important. He'll say, this is what I think, you need to take a look at this. But to be clear, the world got a lot nastier at some point, probably around 2016, 17. And I didn't need to look at a homophobic, anti-Semitic feed that was mine. So Mark has a much thicker skin than I have. I am an out lesbian. I am a proud Jewish person. And when I tell you that, like, I don't need to see the haters out there.
Right.
I don't need to be that part of that. And Mark can filter through and he can post my stuff. There are no comments on my website. I have no interest in that. And I feel like, if someone wants to get me, they know how to get in touch with me. They can send hate mail to me. I'm not going to look at it. Mark's going to look at it. So
Right.
He's not going to tell me the hate mail. He's going to tell me if I've screwed something up. And if I've made a mistake, I do want to be aware of that. If I've said, let's just say I went on the air and I made a mistake and I said something about the way I phrased something, like I said percent versus percentage. And someone says that wasn't right. Yeah, you're right. That wasn't right. So I'll correct that. Or if somebody I'm talking to on my podcast, which is a daily podcast, if I say something in a conversation and then I think, oh, you know what? I should have said something more. I'll say it the next day and I'll say, you know what? I screwed something up about this. Listen, I'm on the air a lot. I'm talking a lot. I'm going to make mistakes. I completely accept that. And even in the written word, but I have an editor at Tribune where I have a column and there are mistakes that are made and I have to make adjustments. I have to be able to just say, that's what happens. We are human beings. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's someone thinking of journalism today, like these kids at Ole Miss, their expectation, they've got to be bracing for blowback as a journalism student already today. And you would look out over this crowd. Imagine you're the graduation speaker for that college. Look out over this crowd of young 20-somethings and say, you've chosen a profession that used to be honored and cherished in our society. You were protected. Now you've got a crosshair on your back. And I mean, what is your thought on that? Are you sad about that? Are you disgusted by that? Are you?
I mean, it's sort of like bemusing in some ways at this point. I mean, look, do I really think that I think that the biggest problem you have in journalism is you have to decide what you want to do. Do I want to be part of a more partisan approach to journalism, or do I want to sort of straight up be the facts, the data, service journalism, like, financial planning or health, or healthcare? Those, like those are very laudable. I'm sure that there are folks who are going to, be haters. But if you really want to try to make a difference.
That's the question. Can you still make a difference in journalism?
I mean, I think you should. Of course you can. I mean, I work with, like I said, I work with unbelievable colleagues. I work with a man named Jim Axelrod, who followed a story through the Biden administration whereby he basically kept knocking on the door and say, hey, wait a second. Remember Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was a Clinton era thing? He was like, isn't it weird that a lot of these people who were discharged dishonorably are due pensions and healthcare benefits? And why haven't we retroactively made that right? He single-handedly, pursuing a story, got thousands of people coverage.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang it, that is amazing. Or Anna Werner, who can talk about how medical bills are often not right and how you can contest them. Or having people like Elizabeth Palmer, who puts herself in war zones and in danger to tell a story, to give both sides of a story. That's pretty amazing. I think the problem is, it used to be you could have a pretty comfortable middle class to upper middle class lifestyle working at a newspaper, whether it was a local or a national, working at a TV station locally or in a network, working at a radio station, and there's just far fewer jobs. And the pay has essentially gone down. And I'm not talking about the Don Lemons of the world who, whatever, make $8 million or, $20 million for the superstars. I'm just saying that to be a journeyman journalist, it's kind of hard right now. There aren't that many jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, you're going to get attacked and you're going to get picked on, and the local newspapers are gone by and large. They certainly are here in my part of the world, that they're just gone. Does CBS motivate you guys? Say, hey team, hey troops, let's all sit together. Everybody hands in. We're still doing a good job. They're lined up picketing outside, but hands in to everybody, team on three.
I don't want to overstate this. There is not as much hate that's coming at me every single day. I mean, I don't feel that. I think the vast majority of people are very happy like turning the TV on, getting some financial advice, hearing about the news of the day.
And I think you're right. You very seldom, at least in my little radio show here, very seldom do I get people who reach out to compliment me. But I hear from them when I bump into them around town or when I'm traveling, and they say very complimentary things about the show. They like it, they need it, they listen to it, they download it, all that kind of stuff. So the compliments are much fewer, but they're out there. It's the negative stuff that people seem to want to get off their chest much more quickly.
I don't know. I really, like I said, I'm not a big star. I'm a very minor person in the...
You say that, but remember who you're talking to, right? You've been on national... When you're on TV, 3 million people see you. That's a big deal to this guy.
Yeah, but I am not... I'm not covering a controversial topic either. Well, like the economy is the economy. I'm not weighing in on legal issues, political issues, all of that. So I think that I have an advantage in that respect, that I have sort of look, I feel like my audience doesn't really care about my politics, and but I'm very out there with who I am.
Jill Schlesinger. We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to What's Working.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. Member FINRA, SIPC. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Jill Schlesinger's most recent book is called The Great Money Reset. The one prior to that, I want to ask you about, Jill, the dumb things smart people do with their money. Very curious. What is the dumbest thing smart people do with their money?
Well, I think they don't recognize that we're all emotional beings. So really the dumbest thing is to think that this is just math. And it's not a math problem, because everything in your life is emotional. And I think that unless you have a recognition that we are all emotional beings and you accept that, you will be much more graceful when it comes to talking about your own finances or what's going on in the world. And I think that that's the challenge, which is that, we have to make a lot of decisions in our lives that touch our money, and we tend to be kind of mean to ourselves. It's funny. I was just given a manuscript. A friend of mine is a Peloton instructor, and she's going to write a book. And, she asked me to blurb the book. And I was thinking that so much of what we tell ourselves about our bodies, about who we are, is so damaging. It's really us. We're very mean to ourselves. And I think we do the same thing about our financial lives. So I think the dumbest thing is to think that you're in some grand mathematical problem when you're in life, and life can be messy and is lived in the gray areas. There is very little black and white in the world.
I had interviewed a woman a few weeks ago, Amy Morin, but one of the things that she said was, don't believe everything you think. And I thought, man, I think that's good advice. That's kind of what you're saying out there. You did a career shift. Lots of the listeners out there are kind of my age. I'm 55 years old. We'll be 55 years old on Monday. But they're in a mid-career thing, and they're looking for the final chapter of their working life. Your career shift, was generated by you, if I recall correctly, selling your company, and then you had gotten a toehold with CBS and you thought maybe I can do more here. Looking back on it, if you could give people listening an advice on a mid-career shift, what would it be?
First of all, buy my book, The Great Money Reset. Change your work, change your wealth, change your life. Listen, I am the kind of person who takes a lot of career risk, and I know that that's something that's very difficult for many.
Yeah.
So I think that what you need to first do is prove to yourself that you can afford to make a shift. So you really do have to run the numbers. You have to make sure that you have understood what your obligations are to yourself, to your spouse, to your kids, to your parents, and run the numbers so that you don't feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants. And then what I think is very helpful when you're trying to reset your life, and that can be, like you said, an off ramp from, 55 to age 70. It can be, wow, I went to law school and I hate being a lawyer. What can I do with that? It's to be curious and to really talk to as many people as you can about what's out there and try to see what is the way you can apply what you can do or what you have been doing most of your life to something else. And that can mean a lot of different things. It's funny, on my podcast, I get a ton of people in the military. Who knows why they're got into the Upper West Side lesbian Jewess, but they got into me and I've been passed around. And I notice with them, it's very fascinating because many of them will be in the military or work in a municipal job, whether it's firefighter or police. And they'll be in those kind of high risk jobs for 20, 25 years. And then they're like, okay, what do I do next? How do I do this? How do I make this transition? And we talk through some of the things that they like to do, where they might apply their skills. So many of them have even called me and said, I want to become a financial planner. What do you think? And I talk to them about making these shifts. But the other piece of this is once you run the numbers, if you find that you can do something, maybe you start doing it a little bit at a time.
Right.
Maybe just a little bit. Maybe it is a side hustle. I'm friends with a guy named Chris Guillebeau. He wrote a book called Side Hustle. And he's got a great podcast, Side Hustle U. And I think what his point to me early on was a side hustle doesn't mean you're necessarily an entrepreneur. It means that you want to do something where you have a creative flow, where you want to dip your toe in the water. You can do it while you're working full time and explore. And again, you don't have to leap from one thing to another, all at once. You can do lots of different things to experiment. And I think give yourself permission to experiment and see what you like.
You talked about career transition. You talked about the way you evaluated it. You talked the way other people should evaluate it. Let me toss you one here.
Okay.
Question. A lady that has never flinched at anything that I've ever asked you. What crossroads are you at right now?
Oh, I'm not really at a crossroads right now. It's funny because I just signed a contract. I would have been if CBS had said, we're not re-signing you, then, I'd be in my late 50s trying to figure out what I want to do next. So what I do is I like to use my network of people to explore new ways to talk about the stuff that I love to talk about. So, that was TV and radio, and then it became podcasting, and it could have been writing or blogging. And, most recently I was a guest on a great investing podcast called The Compound and Friends. Josh Brown and Michael Batnick co-host this podcast, and we just hit it off. It was really awesome. It's like falling in love with somebody at the first date. We were on the air together. It was great. And they came to me and said, we want to do more stuff with you. And so they helped me launch a YouTube channel where I basically do the same kind of thing that I do on my podcast, but I do it for YouTube. And we're starting to incorporate, how do you do video? How am I reaching people who are under the age of 40? Because those people are not in cars necessarily listening to the radio, but they are on YouTube. And I want to be there. I want to meet them where they are. And I am very grateful to people who open the door to me. So my career is not necessarily at a crossroads. In some ways, I'll do this for as long as CBS will have me. And then I'll do all the other stuff for as long as I want to. And so that is something that is kind of cool. It's great. It's sort of like a more mature place to be.
Have you picked a retirement age?
No.
A lady that works in financial planning, you've not said, I'm going to hang it up at this date.
No. Listen, I'm an aging athlete. So, sometimes your body tells you when to quit. But I know that I could quit right now. I know that I've run the numbers up and down and sideways. And so, as a couple, we don't have children. So we have the ability to really, kind of run through these numbers and really look hard. I'm married to somebody who has a very big career. And I think she is more likely than I am to like sort of call it quits sooner, because I think she's got a really hard job. Yeah. And I think my job's kind of fun. So if I could do less of it, that would be great. So, if from 60 to 70, I'm doing less of Jill on money, that would probably be good.
Yeah. How do you interpret everything that's happened to you, Jill, looking back?
I'm just a lucky gal. I mean, I was, the thing is.
Wait a minute. Stop right there.
Yeah.
You're not a lucky gal.
No, I am. Let me be clear about that. I grew up with money. So that's lucky. That is not like, I'm not a genius because I was born on second base. I'm lucky. I had a father who was a journeyman trader on the floor of the American Stock Exchange. His father had a few bucks. My sister and I were raised with anything we wanted. We didn't have to pay for college. So that's basically born on second base. Okay. Sure. So that's luck. I've worked hard and I've taken advantage of opportunities. So when I look at this, I say, like, this is amazing. Like, I walked into the CBS Broadcast Center this morning, and for all the negative news about media, about news people, and about journalism, I walk in that building and I can't believe how lucky I am. I walk into a building where Edward R. Murrow worked, where Walter Cronkite worked, where Scott Pelley works, where Jim Axelrod works, where Gayle King works. Like, I am pretty damn lucky.
You took me on a tour there, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. I'll never forget it. Was walking through the green room around people who were looking at me like, who's that guy? I don't recognize that guy. And I'm looking at them going, who are those people? I recognize those people. And it was so dang cool. Jill, thank you so much for your time. You've got a big advocate here in Mobile, Alabama, and I hope all the people in my 28 different markets are now advocates of yours too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be back after this break with segment 5. I'll tell you what I heard and what you can expect upcoming. You're listening to What's Working? I'm Cam Marston. Be right back.
I'm Joey Mason. For 4 years, my goal has been to produce the best farm-to-table products I'd ever eaten. I've done just that at our on-site USDA facility in Grand Bay, Alabama, allowing us to ship directly to your door. This is true farm-to-table. Visit us at masonhillsfarm.com to see all that we have to offer.
Well, that was fun. All too often, I have a guest on the other line who struggles with their words, struggle with what to say. They're nervous about the microphone in front of them. They're uncomfortable that they may say something and you can see in their eyes. They're thinking about what the words should be. And then you meet somebody like Jill, and she gets on there and absolutely has no fear of anything, has absolute confidence in the words that she says, and that there'd be no retribution for it. She's absolutely candid about her world, her life, the things that got her to where we are. And the first item on my list of questions that I had for Jill as I was thinking what I wanted to talk to her about is, what's your read on the economy? And we never got into that. We never even touched on it. We got out of the gate and things went a little bit crazy from there. And I'm grateful for it. It's fun to have those very candid, very fast, very interactive conversations, and I'm grateful for Jill. Again, I told y'all this when the show started. Many years ago, she was very kind to me and showed me around CBS where all these people were. I recognized them, and they were looking at me saying, who is that guy? Why is he with her? We know her. We don't know him. Who is he? We need to know who he is. And I wanted to say, I'm really nobody. I'm out of my zone here, but I'm going to act like I belong until I pee in my pants. And that's exactly what I did. Did my best to do that anyway. So I think what we heard there is she recognized her luck. She recognized that she started on second base, as we said, but it has not diminished her desire to succeed, to achieve. She likes to stay busy. She likes to stay curious. She reframes things in such a way that makes her curious about what's going on out there, which has allowed her success in journalism. Amazingly, as she said, all this, the world of journalism is contracting, but what I talk to the people at Ole Miss about is the kids still want to get into it, and my daughter being one of them, and I'm an element of journalism, of marketing and communications, and my hope is that she lands on her feet, as you can imagine. So, again, grateful for Jill for that show. If you want to find that interview and listen to it again, you feel like there's someone you could send it on to, you can go to whatsworkingcam.com. Again, whatsworkingcam.com. You'll find all these shows, everything we've done recently, and get some links on the show. We're also created a list of the different stations that are now broadcasting this show or different parts of the show. And I'm proud to say that list keeps growing. I go to the site every now and then to update it. I look at it and say, dang, that ain't bad, boy. Good for you. So happy that the show continues to grow. And if you want to find, as I said, previous shows, you can go there. I encourage you to check us out on social media. It's a big part of the 2024 push is to become more and more relevant on this insidious thing called social media. Yet that's what we're doing. So check me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I put the most content that matters. But on Facebook, you'll get, I don't know, all kinds of junk, frankly. Instagram, too. Here's what I'm thinking right now. God help us, please. God help us all. Anyway, we got another show coming next week. I hope it's I've got a interview lined up about 50%. And if it comes through, it'll be a big one for me. Very, very exciting. It'll take place here in the studio here in Mobile, Alabama, with a guy that we all maybe should hear about. Maybe I should button my lip. You're listening to What's Working. We'll be back next week. Have a good week, everybody. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes, they're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.